I'd been working with a theater company with a group of friends of mine and I, and I mean, we were very small and we didn't make any money. And over the years, I noticed all my friends were getting married and having children, and our day jobs were turning into careers, and it was becoming the theater company was becoming a hobby. But it was more than that for me, and I knew it always would be. So I had written a play called Five Women Wearing the Same Dress that was produced off Broadway. A talent scout from Carsey Warner Television saw it, and I was offered a job writing for a situation comedy called Grace Under Fire, which I had never heard of because I didn't watch TV. And I thought, well, how many times is this going to happen? And so I moved out to LA on a Friday, and I started work on a Monday, and I've been there for about, I guess, 17, 18 years now.
That experience wasn't a happy one, though, was it?
No. First of all, television, especially sitcoms, that's just factory work. It is factory work, and it was not a functional environment. It was very dysfunctional for a lot of different reasons. And I think between that and my next television job, which was Civil, which was again a fairly dysfunctional environment.
What do you mean by that? And what effect did it have on your writing?
I think in both instances, there was a lack of respect for the text that I had become used to in theater, whereas in television, at least on those shows, it was just, it was just constantly changed and constantly replaced, and we had to work, 70, 80 hours a week, and nothing got better. It just got different. And the writing was just, it was considered very secondary. The star, their sort of approach, their take on everything was the most important thing. I noticed that sometimes we would have a run-through and a joke that had worked really well the day before. People wouldn't laugh as much because they knew the punchline. They knew it was coming, and a lot of comedy depends on surprise. And everybody would go, oh, well, that joke doesn't work anymore. So we'd have to stay that night and rewrite all those jokes, and there was a lot of wasted time. There was a lot of just spinning of wheels, and the shows themselves, while they were amusing, they weren't really about anything. And I think I sort of said to myself, wow, if I'm ever in a position to have any power, things are going to be a lot different. And I also, that last year I was on Sybil, I had planned to take the year off and work on a screenplay, and they offered me so much money that I said, okay, well, I'll stay another year, I'll put this money in the bank, I'll take next year off. But I felt like such a whore, and I couldn't, well, because I was, and I couldn't wait. I would come home and I would pound out this really angry screenplay, which ended up being American Beauty. Just to survive in the sitcom world, I had sort of disconnected from my work in a way that was, I think, very upsetting to my sort of identity and psyche, whatever you want to call it. So on some level, I knew like I had to write something that I cared about. I had to reattach the passion to the work that I had always taken for granted before, but it was impossible to have when you're a factory worker on a sitcom. And it's no mistake that it's no coincidence that American Beauty is about a man who is a writer, granted for a technical magazine, but he's still a writer, and it's about a guy who sort of had been, deadened, who rediscovered his passion for living, because what happened to me in the process is I rediscovered my passion for my work.
Did winning the Oscar affirm you in any way? Did you see that as a great measure of success?
Well, it's a very surreal experience, and the entire business in Hollywood goes insane for about 3 months. And for about 3 months, I've always had a real outsider mentality, and I hope I still do. For about 3 months, my job became being myself, and DreamWorks would send me here and there and get on this radio and go talk at this panel and this film festival, and it was good in that I picked up a lot of skills, but it felt like somebody else was doing it, and I was watching it going, who's that guy? That is really bizarre. I think when they called my name out, the first thing I did was go, like, it's over. Now it's so. I mean, it was great that I won. Of course, it's like winning King of the Prom. It's like, oh, I'm really popular. I sort of feel, I totally understand that Sally Field moment. And she's like, oh my God, you like me? Because, we're all insecure freaks, writers. But I would say it certainly it changed the way people approached me, because all of a sudden, any ideas I have, people would go like, "Oh yeah, oh." Whereas before they'd be like, "Yeah, no, let's do it the other way." But if you have this little gold statue and you wrote a movie that made a bunch of money, all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, he knows what he's doing," even though you're the same writer you were before.
You've come back to television. When did that occur? Had things changed?
No, I had signed a 3-year television development deal a week before I sold American Beauty, and I had 2 years left on that deal, and I had cashed their checks. So I didn't want to be the guy who goes like, "Oh, well, this great thing happened to me, so long, bye-bye." I felt like I needed to honor my commitment. I developed a television show for ABC, a situation comedy that did not succeed. And then I had 1 year left, and I knew that HBO wanted to do a show about a family-run funeral home because they had pitched it to me. And I just wrote it on spec because I didn't want to have to go do another sitcom.
What was different that made it more palatable?
Well, HBO is a different beast altogether than the commercial broadcast networks. They really do want original voices. They did at that time, and they still do. They really do want something that doesn't feel like every other show on television. And I had won an Oscar. So I think they, whereas when I hadn't won the Oscar when I developed the show for ABC, and every step along the way, they would have me change this and change this and change this to make it resemble something that had already been really successful. Whereas HBO, they were like, "We love it." Honestly, the first note I got when I gave them my first draft was, it's really good, it's really deep, we love the characters, whatever, but it feels a little safe. Can you make the whole thing just a little more fucked up? And I was like, yeah. In fact, what I sort of had to do is unlearn all the things I had learned in network TV, which was basically all the network notes can be articulated in 2 thoughts. Make everybody nicer, and articulate the subtext. Have somebody speak the subtext, both of which are just death to good drama.
And finally, True Blood has been such a massive success. Does it strike you as funny? You've come sort of almost full circle. You went and wrote for television for the first time and had a sort of somewhat bad experience, had great success in film, and now great success in television. It's quite an interesting journey, back to the beginning, but in a nicer sort of way.
I have to say, I think television right now is really far more welcoming to interesting, complicated, nuanced storytelling for adults than movies are. Part of it is economic because of how expensive movies are. The people who finance them are so scared they want something that's going to play to the largest possible audience all over the world, which means very recognizable stories and stereotypes and that kind of thing. And then part of it is the canvas is bigger in television in a way. The screen may be smaller, but for example, there are 63 hours of 6 Feet Under. At the end of this season, there are 48 hours of True Blood, and so in a way, it's like a movie's like a short story, but a television series is like a novel, like a big novel. And in the case of True Blood, I'm not in any way comparing myself to Dickens, but it has a sort of Dickensian scope in terms of the amount of characters, and everybody has a story, and it's sort of a big picture of a society. So I'm very happy to be working in TV. I also, over the last few years, I wrote and directed a film. I wrote a play that was produced in New York. I have several films I'm trying to get off the ground. I still want to write more plays. I like being able to write in different mediums because they are very different mediums. So I just consider myself extremely lucky.